Hello, genealogists. This is Craig, and this is Just Genealogy. And we're going to again talk about the identity triangulation model or the peso dance and deal with the second element today, and that is the element of relationships, or as I call it, kin. So, what we're interested in is how relationships are proved. And we are linking people through chains of evidence, doing that analysis and correlation, and taking those individual records that exist on that dress, in that model, and bringing them together, correlating them, so that we can come to some conclusions about how people relate to each other. So we're looking for a couple of things. Actually more than a couple. We're looking about how the people interact with each other. In other words, we're looking for clusters of people who do interact with each other, because it may be possible to differentiate between two different people because this group interacts with a person of interest. This group does not interact with a person of the same name. Therefore, they're not of interest. So associates will congregate around the individual that you're interested in, but the other individual may have an entirely different set of associates and they don't overlap. And this may be one way of differentiating between two men of the same name because they have different associates. And they have different kin. Their wives are different, their children are different. When you look at them on the census, they're just not the same. And there's also the issue of proximity. How close do these people live to each other? I've always had the comment, how far will a man travel to get a wife? Well, it depends on whether he has a horse or not. So people who are in close proximity to each other are more likely to be associates and more likely to be kin than people who are more distant. Then there's the issue of common ownership of property. How does the property move? You always want to, I harp on this all the time, you want to have an in and out table for every single one of your ancestors, one way or t'other, just because land helps identify individuals. In other words, if you've got an individual on land, and then all of a sudden another individual gets that land, and they didn't buy it, how did they get the land? They could only inherit it. Therefore, there is a connection between these two people. They are kin because they couldn't just acquire the land unless they were related, unless there's a sale. Now, if there's a sale and the sale is for just a tiny little bit of money, it may be that they're related also. But if they get it through inheritance, in the absence of probate, in the absence of a will, when somebody's intestate and all of a sudden family is, and especially if it's being divided up equally, if you can identify 5 sevenths out of 7 sevenths, you need to be looking for 2 more sevenths so that you have all the land and all the people associated with it. So if a man dies intestate and his wife is gone and he has 7 children, then the land is going to be divided up 7 ways, given that he doesn't have a will, and that's by law. So therefore, you'll be able to prove the connection of those 7 people to that man because of that land transaction. And then we have the issue of common patterns of migration. Did they come from the same place? Do they know how to farm here? Did we break out our burpee seed catalog and see that they came right through the temperate zone? And then there also is the issue of naming. This is especially true of Scots. And by that I mean Scottish people. They have naming patterns. And if you're looking for Scottish naming patterns, a good place to look is Black's Surnames of Scotland in the introduction. He also discusses T names at the same time, something else to talk about at some point. There are Dutch naming patterns, and there's an NGS special publication on Dutch naming patterns that's available from Heritage Books. So that about covers the pieces of relationship that deal with attaching kin to that individual. It's not just what the individual does that makes him unique. It's the people who are attached to him, the relationships he has with people around him that are attached to him also. So you want to work on that. There's more to this than records. Many times by researching kin records, I'll call them, or records of individuals who are related to the person, your person of interest, especially siblings and parents, they may identify a relationship that will allow you to create a relationship. In other words, you're able to prove that this is a sibling, but you're unable to prove the parent, but this sibling says that his parents are. So therefore, because you're able to identify the sibling and you know who that sibling's parents are, you know who your person's parents are. It's called indirect evidence. That said, this is Craig. This is Just Genealogy. And now we've gone through 2 out of 3 elements of the identity triangulation model, or the peso dance. And the next one that we're going to deal with is the concept of origin or origins. Thank you all so very much. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to tell your friends. Thank you very much for your support. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you.